Let's get back to our discussion with Warren Buffett and Carol Loomis. Again, the book is Tap Dancing to Work. And I don't know, Carol, I was going to ask you if you've been adding to your portfolio in any areas of the market or whether you had any big acquisition. And then I thought, you know what, I should probably stick to Buffett with those type of questions, right? I don't want to ignore you.
I think so. I don't think I'm going to rock the market, but like Warren might.
All right, I'm not ignoring you, but I'm just going to...
No, that's all right. That's all right.
Okay. Warren, a lot of times in the past, you've said that guys like you are coddled by the IRS, and you put forth the Buffett rule, which I think at 1 to 10, it's 30%, right, and over 10, it's 35%.
As a minimum tax.
Yeah, as a minimum tax. And I think about that, and we're still not going to get, we're not going to get you. We're not going to get what we need from you. And I think about over the years what you've been able to do, and you're one of the 7 wonders of the universe, obviously, to accrue $50 billion. I don't think you've done it by being a patsy in terms of paying taxes. I think you've known how to take advantage of structures and deals to make sure that there's a degree of tax avoidance in the way you do things. If we were to put the Buffett rule in, we're still not going to get you. And since you've given it all to Gates, we're not going to get you even when you give it away. So we're never going to get what you want everybody else to do. We're never going to get it from you, are we? And you said something about the middle class, a morale booster if rich people pay their taxes. You're not going to boost anyone's morale ever by funding the federal government, are you?
You're going to get what you'll get from me under this is you'll get 35%. And
if you pay yourself income from
well, no. If I have investment income, which is where my main income comes from, I will pay 35%. Right now, my income is probably larger than Carol's. Carol is paying more, I'm sure, in income.
I know, but I will. You know my point. We're still not going to really get. You've been able to take advantage of the system to accrue a huge amount of wealth, and you will never really fund the federal government's operations like you would have it done. And God bless you that you're giving it to charity. I think you have said on the network that is a better use probably of your wealth than the government. But I just don't seem like you've ever really, paid your share, or what you would call your fair share of taxes.
No, I agree. I certainly agree. In the last 10 years, that's been true. I used to pay a much higher rate, but in the last 10 years, it's true. My rate has been down there, with Governor Romney's and a whole bunch of other super rich people, and I would pay 35%. Under this, and I would pay 35% on all the money that ever ends up in my pocket.
All right. Hey, Warren, along the same lines, when you think about corporate taxes and Berkshire's contribution to the system, I remember us talking a couple years ago, we were talking about the structure of Berkshire, and part of the structure of Berkshire has been to take the profits from one entity and be able to reinvest in another entity, and as a result, you're not being taxed on those profits.
No, that's not true. That's not true. If we earn money at See's Candy and use that money to buy the BNSF Railroad, we pay taxes at all of the income made at See's before it's used elsewhere. So we on intercorporate transfers of money, that has no effect on Berkshire's tax rate. Berkshire pays normal taxes on whatever it makes at Marmon or whatever it makes at See's or even NetJets, Joe.
But not on.
That's Andrew now. I'm not. That's Andrew. He's the one that's saying all this nasty stuff now. Don't say Joe. I'm done.
It isn't nasty.
I took my shot.
But Warren, though, you guys pay taxes on the overall profits from Berkshire every year, not the individual entities, right?
Well, the individual entities contribute to the consolidated tax return,
right?
But any money made at you name the subsidiary at BNSF or Mid-American Energy, that gets taxed at normal rates, even though we perhaps distribute it and use it for some other purpose.
Do you think that there's a better way on corporate taxes, not only to reduce the rate and close loopholes and all of that, but when you think about the success of Berkshire, but to be able to better capture taxes effectively, the fair share issue on the corporate side from companies like Berkshire, which I do believe pay their taxes fairly, but you go and look at an Apple, for example, and you say, look at all those profits, and it's not really clear that the U.S. government and taxpayers here have been a huge beneficiary of all their success.
Well, it's certainly true that the biggest decline among major categories of tax revenues by the federal government has been the corporate tax. If you go back to the 1950s and 1960s, about 4% of GDP was paid in corporate taxes, and tax rates were 52% for a long period and then 48%. So 4% was going. Last year, in the fiscal year that just ended, I think there were $242 billion of corporate taxes paid against $15.7 trillion, roughly, of GDP rate at the end of the year. So it's fallen from 4%, over 4% of GDP, to the 1.5% range. So the biggest beneficiary of reductions in tax rates in the last 30 or 40 years has been corporations, and the biggest increase has been in the payroll tax. The payroll tax has gone up.
Are you a believer in a territorial system then?
Well, I believe that corporate taxes have not been a problem for corporate America.
Hey, Warren, I was on another subject. I was reading of all places, the New York Times. I went back to it.
Joe.
I'm reading it a little bit now.
Now that Warren's writing for the Times again?
Eduardo Porter makes, I was flabbergasted by what this is really saying. He points out that income disparity, obviously everybody knows how the rich have gotten richer. In fact, the richest 1% of families earned 93% of the income growth in the first 2 years of the economic recovery, and the rest of us got 7%. But then he goes on to concede we still have maybe the most progressive tax rate of all advanced countries right now.
I don't agree with that.
But no, let me just read it. Many Americans may find it hard to believe, but the United States already has one of the most progressive tax systems in the developed world, according to several studies, raising proportionately more revenue from the wealthy than other advanced countries do. But you can disagree with that, I'm saying. But what he then says is that that is not the key to reducing income disparity. It's not that you raise from the wealthy instead of others, but that we simply don't raise enough. We don't raise enough to actually help the middle class and the poor to actually help narrow that disparity. And he's arguing that until you go back to the middle class or go back to more taxpayers, you're never going to do what you need to do in terms of income disparity.
Yeah, well, we're raising dramatic amounts from the middle class. I mean, if you look at the payroll taxes, 1/3 of the entire revenue of the United States comes from payroll taxes.
Should we really put Social Security in there all the time? We can't have that mixes things up so much. It's not apples to apples when you do it that way. That was not designed as an income tax. It's an insurance system, right?
Believe me, it's a tax.
I know you have to pay it. I know you have to pay it, but
and you pay it based on your income, and it quits.
And then the government steals it and uses it anyway for expenses a lot of times anyway. But if you were to just back out your payroll tax point,
well, that's a third of the income of the federal government. So it's $800 billion, and it's the most regressive tax. In fact, if you have a couple that's each making about $100,000, they're paying it on $200,000. I'm paying practically no payroll tax. I pay it on my salary of $100,000, and you know, that's a third of the revenue of the country that basically comes from a very regressive tax.
Right. But people that do make let's take people that make $1 million or $2 million that pay 35% don't have a lot of deductions. If you make $2 million and you pay $700,000 in federal taxes, and then you also pay state and local income tax, you get up to close to 50%. Is that
you get a deduction for your state taxes?
For your state, but if you add everything in, you get up to a number that's somewhere around $800,000 or $900,000, right?
You certainly can get to 40 if you deduct your
40%
of your state taxes.
Are those people undertaxed?
Well, but the point I made in the article, of course, is if you take the 400 highest taxpayers who average $200 million apiece of income, very few of them are paying that rate you're talking about.
No, I know. But these are people that haven't, those people, maybe they work their whole life to where they have capital gains and dividends. We should have a discussion.
Or maybe they just inherited it.
Or maybe they inherited it. But we should have a discussion on, I don't know what the right capital gains or dividend rate is. But just in terms of ordinary income that you get on your W-2, if you make $1 million or $2 million, you're paying about 40%. Is that definitely, are those people undertaxed?
No, I say that's about right.
Yeah.
But I say that the super rich are not paying that.
I wish we could get more from them. We can only
we can't. All we need is
but it doesn't help that much. There was a study yesterday. You get $3 or $4 billion, and that takes 500 years to pay off.
No, you get a whole lot more than $3 or $4 billion. I can tell you that. I mean, just sit down and figure it. I mean, you've got you've got people making $200 million a year. You got to have 6 of them that pay no tax. I mean, they're part of Governor Romney's 47%. They're the moochers.
Warren, I know you've said in the past that you agree with plans like Domenici and Simpson-Bowles. You've gone along with those things. In those plans, they take ordinary income and they tax capital gains and dividends at the same levels as ordinary income. They get rid of things like charitable deductions. You go along with all those parts of the plan?
Well, I go along. I mean, they all have a little different. Right? I can go along with any number of plans that, in general, move up the revenue to 18.5% or so of GDP and move down expenses to around 21. I mean, whether it's Rivlin, Domenici, whether it's Simpson-Bowles, whether it's whether it's Quick Kernan. I mean, you can come up with a lot of proposals.
You left out Sorkin.
Well, I really there's all kinds of plans that generally make sense, and instantly I think we'll come up with one. But one of the problems you have is I think you could have a majority of Congress before a plan, but the far left would not. Would have some votes that didn't like it. The far right would have some votes that didn't like it. And if the leadership of either party is worried that they're going to lose their leadership because of that maybe minority within their own party, you might have something that a majority of Congress would approve, but it still will not get to a vote. I think we may have had that problem with the grand bargain, over a year ago.
We had Roger Altman on yesterday, and he said he thinks it's the equities market that will eventually put pressure on the elected leaders, that you'd see a sell-off in the stock market, and that would be the thing that pushed them back, just like TARP.
Well, it certainly happened with TARP, yeah.
Do you think that that's a likely scenario? I mean, if you think there's a chance we may not get a deal by December 31st, does the equity market react, and does that in turn force Congress and the president?
Yeah, I don't know what stock markets will do. They can do anything, but I think there will be a lot of pressure if they don't get an agreement by December 31st, whether it comes from the stock market or just letters pouring in, or whether it comes from CNBC and the media generally. But we are not going to go for months after January 1st. But it wouldn't surprise me if we go past January 1st. Well, I don't think the world will come to an end. I will guarantee you this: Berkshire has about 290,000 employees now. If there's not a deal on December 31st, there's not an employee that we're going to lay off in January 1st or 2nd or 3rd or 4th. It just won't happen.
Hey, Warren, one question on charitable deductions that I've been thinking about. If there was a real cap on deductions, do you think it would have changed either the way people approach charity today, or would have changed the way you approach charity over the years? By waiting, you were able to compound, which was a great thing. But maybe without the deduction, you would have done it differently?
No, because I don't get the deduction on virtually everything I give away. I've got a $10 billion charitable loss carry forward, or charitable deduction carry forward, which I'll never use. So I get to take a deduction for maybe, well, not more than 1%, less than 1% of the value of what I give away every year.
Send me that instead of a brick. I have a $10 billion loss carry, but you can't do that. It's a
charitable deduction carry forward.
Yeah, you can't do that.
What I give away to private foundations is limited to 20% of my adjusted gross income. So the deduction has nothing. If there was no deduction allowed, it would not change my charitable giving a penny. And that's true of a number of wealthy people, but there's some other people that it's not true of.
You did like Simpson-Bowles, more. I mean, if they did that and did the 28% rate, and then what would the cap be for the maximum amount of deductions a person could take? Would it work that way? You could take 50 and everything else is gone?
I don't know the answer to that, but
would it work?
But there are a lot of things that'll work, Joe. I mean, we've had all kinds of things that have worked over the last 50 or 60 years.
You'd be okay at 28% if there were no deductions and you had to pay 28% on all your income? That'd be okay?
I'd be fine. I'd be fine.
All right. Not everybody's fine with that. I think that's a.
Well, we've certainly had times when the normal rate for a high income person was at the 50% level.
Except they had a bunch of other deductions. And
no, they didn't. No,
really?
They didn't.
Even at 90% they did, right?
Well, I mean, listen, I can show you my tax returns. Yeah. I literally, in the last 10 years, my tax rate has averaged way less than when I was in my 30s and 40s. And believe me, I'm making more money now.
All right. Hey, Warren, one thing we haven't talked about is investing, and I wonder, given the fiscal cliff and the volatility that we've seen thus far, and perhaps may see even more, what you're doing.
It doesn't change anything. If you own a farm and you like the farm, are you going to buy or are you going to sell the farm because of a fiscal cliff? Are you going to sell an apartment house you have? Are you going to sell your McDonald's franchise?
No, but if there's a couple of cheap farms out there, you might buy them.
Well, you might buy them, sure. Well, I like to buy.
What are you doing? Have you done anything interesting in the past couple of weeks?
The fiscal cliff has nothing to do with long-term investment decisions.
Have you doubled down on anything, though, given the price?
On balance, we buy. But we're buying just like we were buying 6 months ago or so. I mean, the fiscal cliff does not enter into my investment decisions.
Okay, but no new names to share.
Not today. No, when I get another movie, I'll let you know.
Carol,
okay, we got to try.
Carol, what about you? No. Oh, no, I already did. I already said I wouldn't.
Carol's a big investor, though. She's a great investor.
Oh, well, I wouldn't say great, but I've learned a lot from Warren over the years about investing, and I don't panic. So many people are very emotional, and when the stock goes down, they are ready to sell, and as Warren says, he buys when the stock goes down, and I'm inclined to do that too. So I'm not worried about that.
How long have you held Berkshire?
I've held Berkshire since the early 70s. I mean, we've never sold.
Wow.
Except for one trade when in the first year that John bought originally, he did sell once in the first year, but other than that, we have never sold a share of stock.
And those aren't fee shares either, are they?
Well, no, thankfully they're not.
And do you have a round lot? I'm trying to get to the bottom of this.
No.
I'm trying to get to the bottom of this.
No, I think we could not. As a matter of fact, I think I've forgotten a lot of the details, so that's very good that I've forgotten them.
Hey, Carol, you first wrote about Warren back in 1966. You put one line into a story you were working on about Alfred Winslow Jones.
That's right.
And it was a story about hedge funds, and I just wonder, as you've watched hedge funds over the years, what's surprised you about the way the industry has evolved?
Well, it's grown way beyond anything I could have expected. As a matter of fact, the second time, though, we do need to mention that the first time I wrote about Warren, I misspelled his name and left off the second T.
Yeah.
But then 4 years later, I was writing a story called "Hard Times Come to the Hedge Funds," and it was a time, just a temporary one as it turned out, when they had enormous problems. Warren was getting out at that point. And I could not have imagined then that they would have grown to the importance that they have today. And I think much of it is, or some of it is probably not good that it worked out that way.
Yeah, I heard in another interview that Tap Dancing to Work was not the first name you had come up with for the book. What were your first choices?
Well, no. I think I'm not going to mention the first title that the publisher wanted to use. It would we might spend a lot of time talking about that. No. We actually I gather that negotiation between the publisher and the author, and fortune in this case, is often a very important part of the process by which a book gets named. And I wasn't accustomed to that. Never written a book before. Never really thought I was going to write a book. And it took us a while, but not as long as you think. And then when I came up with Tap Dancing to Work, the publisher immediately said, "That's it." And it is, because it's such a perfect description of how Warren feels about going to work every day at Berkshire Hathaway.
Warren, what's your favorite story in the book? And you're not allowed to say any of the ones that you wrote.
Oh, not the ones I wrote. I think the favorite story has the most drama in it. Certainly is the story at Solomon. I mean that would have made a good movie at the time, and Carol knew all the details, and I think she wrote about it brilliantly.
Hey guys, I saw you guys yesterday, and we were talking about preparations. You were going on the Daily Show last night with Jon Stewart. I saw some of the clips, including the reference to calling you communists. So I wanted to get a report card on the experience.
Well, and Andrew, a nice shirt, by the way.
Thank you. Somebody likes it.
It was great fun. It really was. It's a whole new experience. My daughter was in the audience, and you know, it's a different class of viewer, and we had a great time.
We had a terrific time.
All right, Warren, Carol, thank you both for joining us this morning. Again, the book, for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's called Tap Dancing to Work. It's on sale now, and we appreciate your time joining us today. We hope to see both of you again soon.
Thanks for having us.